Hey Amanda, hey Paul, how are you doing?
Good. How are
Good.
you?
Well, I guess we had some internet connection issues, and uh, long story short, I'm glad we made this work. You both are there, and I'm very excited to talk to you guys about your book. So remind me again, your book is called the Birthmark Scar, correct?
Correct.
First of three.
Good deal. Well, let's first start out. I would like to know a little bit more about both of you. So, Amanda, if you could start out, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got on this path. We'll go over to Paul, and then we'll get into the book.
So I've lived in the Kansas City area my whole life. I've always loved the written word, stories, books. I was lucky enough they paid me to read books for a master's thesis, so that was cool. And then Paul and I met when I got my first job over at Fort Leavenworth. Um, he had a dream that Lil told him that we should write books together, and for whatever reason, that like made me trust him. So that's how my story of how I came to meet Paul and start working on this book project together.
And so, the things you added to the book, what was it about your background, and if you could go a little bit about that was your addition to the book.
So I've probably read at least a couple thousand books in my life, at least, and I've studied books at a really great school, and then I edit for a living. So I think, and I write poetry. So I just think I have a really refined sense of like how language and story work and character, um, and pacing and all of that stuff, I guess.
And
And
Paul,
we're
what
kind of,
about you?
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to write back in the early 90s when I went into college, but I did follow that path. And so I followed a different path for 30 years. And so after a kind of a really long career in something else in the military, I transitioned to a different career, which gives me the opportunity to write. And so it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. And I'm not very, uh, uh, I have a good creativity mind, but I don't know how to put it together. And that's kind of how we met. We really, work well together in forming the book, and we work off of each of our, kind of pros and cons. It complements each other. And, that's kind of where the book started. And then we're on, number three, and we'll have it. It's going to be a continuing process. So that's kind of where we are. On the side, I'm a professor, and I write for academia. So writing for this is much more enjoyable for me personally.
Well, it sounds like you guys were already pretty close together before you even kind of embarked on this endeavor. Because for somebody just to show up to you and say, "Hey, I have a dream about writing a book. What do you think? Should we do this?" So, does one of you two want to start out about how that process started?
so I've always been into kind of like non-mainstream thinking or ideas about like why are we all here. And I was working in this army environment, and it's very mainstream, slightly conservative in that kind of a way. So I always just get really excited when I meet someone who's interested in the metaphysical or like the spiritual side of life. And he brought it up, and we just ran with that from there.
So please, either of you, feel free to fill in any other gaps that you would like to inform me of or everyone else watching. So because sometimes there's some things that I don't know to ask. So when it comes to especially that process, so did you guys kind of attack it of, okay, I'll cover chapter 1, 2, and 3, and you cover chapter after, all these other chapters after that, or how did that start out?
So we would do like um, our I don't know, like our witch or druidic ceremonies together. And then from doing those, Paul would get like the vision or the download, and then throw the vision onto the page. And then we would work together from there once it was on the page.
So, Paul, what is that process like for you?
It's I've denied it for many years. And it kind of takes a crucible event in your life to kind of receive it. And that's kind of how the process of listening to the voices and believing in them after, I call it organized religion and all these other things that but once you're more spiritual in mind, things look clearer, and that's kind of the purpose. The kind of what got me personally all started was kind of a crucible event in the life, and meeting my first medium, something that was kind of against the doctrinal dogma of the church, and all of a sudden things started to open up, and with a lot of psychic development and some help, we kind of found kind of a vision and a path. So that's kind of the um, there's like a whole nother world out there. You just have to open it up to see it, and most people don't have the opportunity.
So then these visions then basically came together. What would be the book? Am I right?
Yes, correct.
And so, please, tell me a little bit more about then what these different aspects that you then put together on the page. What was there already like a clear image for the whole book of how it's supposed to be, or was that just kind of page by page process?
It was definitely a discovery. So a lot of the original material is past life related, which is something I still have a lot like a weird skepticism about, even though it's like my experience has shown me that it's real. So a lot of the material was past life related, and then I think it was like you just get all the because it's a bunch of different characters and storylines and timelines, and so you just get you get like this character and what's going on in their life, and that character and what's going on in their life, and then as you kind of their stories come out onto the page, you start to get a sense of how they fit together and or how to best fit them together to make it make sense in a book.
And
kind of to add to that comment is it's kind of the process of believing, the process of an adult person acknowledging that the metaphysical is out there and the possibilities of the truth when other various items are kind of out there. And it's kind of a psychological learning, from kind of a disbelief to a belief to a part of a life process.
And so, through your process, what have you discovered? Where was it taking you then, basically, to encompass the whole meaning of the book?
Where it takes me is to a new peace. I have traumatic stress, and so you find a different way of calmness, a different spirituality. I spend lots of times in the woods, in nature. And so it's a healing. This whole process for me is very healing in regards to my personal self. And it's actually, when you bring it up into the clinical side of the house, they actually encourage it, to anything that helps you heal and feel better about yourself is kind of a good thing and to pursue.
So the way I always think of it is like there's multiple layers to the mind or the self, and in our society we're taught to only really relate to the conscious mind, And then we kind of have like a judgmental aspect to relating to all the rest of ourselves other than the conscious mind. And the way that psychology originated, the way that the Christian religion developed, like reinforces that. And it's just, I don't know, it's just part of like the Western deal. Like that's just like kind of the group Western spiritual struggle, I think. And so for me, working on this book, one helps me to fight those, to discover those like kind of conflicts in my own self, because when you're writing from your whole self. And so to bring those to light and just examine them and, make new decisions or see things in new ways. And then to share that and the possibilities of that with other people through the story that we told.
And can you go a little bit into then what the story was in the book and what it is that you present there?
So the main character has, I'm just going to tell the kind of the jumping off point of the story. The main character is just like a normal, middle class, Midwestern, middle-aged, mid guy. And somebody at his job, he finds out that he's known for years, likes to do oracle readings. And this person had never occurred to them to think about that or do that. It's not a part of their life, but because this person they know does it, they get curious and schedule a reading. And the night before the reading, the main modern character's father dies. So he goes into the reading with the death of it, like he still decides to go. And the oracle reader makes contact with the dad, unknown. She's like, oh, there's a death. Oh, like, like she knew there was a death, and she made contact with the father and channeled these words from the parent that were healing and that were spoken at the eulogy and that healed the whole community or brought peace to the whole community. And so when you have that kind of experience, you're confronted, like you can't hide it, like you can have these little moments of coincidence or synchronicity or magic and then return back to your normal life. But when you have something that huge, like you're confronted, and you're pulled into a whole new world. So the main character is pulled into his past lives, he meets all these people with like special abilities. He learns how to visit his inner temple, and like kind of have a concrete and choice-based relationship with the metaphysical aspects of life. And then there's all this spice of adventure and intrigue and challenge thrown in there as well.
Paul, you look like you wanted to add something to that.
No, man, she covered everything, and the kind of the goodness of the story is when we talk about some of the past lives, it's normal people. It's a normal person living in a certain time, and you get to see some of the character, and you kind of get to see the humanity of civilization, by telling stories that are in our history of a I call it a plain point of view from a person's mind is kind of a unique storytelling of our humanity. And then to connect it all at the end of the book is what the purpose, what we do is that the lives we lead today are linked to our past lives and to our future lives. And so, however the reader wants to interpret their religious based or spiritual base is kind of up to them to interpret at the end of the book how they kind of take the story and learn from it.
So based on both of your individual experiences, was it basically kind of what each one of you had experienced with this, I guess, journey before you both kind of get going on the writing? Is it basically a combination of that? Say, okay, we're going to go into this subject in this way, and now we're going to cover this subject in that way, and so on. Is that how it kind of progressed? And if you can go a little bit, in some details that you find more relevant. I know you mentioned past lives. What was this? You said tarot card reading that the main character gets exposed to, and things like that, which means there's aspects of that both of you are familiar with or decided to write about. So maybe a little bit of background story for each one of you, or one or the other, that basically based on that experiences you've had that brought that to the book. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. One of the characters, like the psychic, the oracle reader, is actually a real person. And it's kind of my personal experience with her. And she even didn't want me to change her name in the book. She's like, I'm not afraid of my name being in the book. And so we are actually, she was a wonderful contributor to the process. And, being who I am and what I've done, now reading oracle cards is kind of a very unique turn in my life. But we have a great many people to be thankful for who have helped us along the way in this metaphysical realm. But Lena is the actual real person in the book and a real person in Kansas. And so she was one of the first people we got to approve the book. And so she's proud of us, and she likes to, it's kind of an educational book for people to kind of step their toe into the metaphysical and just to try and to see the world in a different light. So that's kind of my most personal story on that topic.
So I don't know what to say. I guess the different character arcs, like, I think they reflect like components of our personalities for sure. But it was more just about just discovering, it's not like it's an extension of ourselves. It was more like just discovering these people that we feel really close to and we already knew, and yet know nothing about them, and are going through this discovery process with the characters.
Right. So what about you specifically? Because you were saying that you're having a hard time with past life regression, or was it just past life idea? But even though then you said something, if I heard you correctly, but my own experiences say otherwise. Can you go into that if that's okay with you?
Sure. Yeah. So I was originally a Taoist, and Taoist kind of just when you ask questions about anything you can't touch, see, feel, or taste, is to just laugh and have a good time about it, because there's no way to know. So that was my first religion that I chose for myself for 18 to 20 something or whatever. And so, just the thought of dealing with past lives just seemed silly to me. And it just really easy to fall into traps of bias or, wish fulfillment when it comes to past life stuff. But I was in this class, and they made us do a past life thing, and I got this recording of someone channeling my past life, and it just I heard it, and I just it was magnetic. It was just a complete magnet of my mind, heart, and soul just being yes, that is me. And I listened to that CD over and over and over, and it just helped me understand some of the bigger patterns of my life that would have just felt like chaos, or the universe being out to get me kind of a stuff. But having that insight helped me see the patterns of my own life, and make peace with them, and find new ways to have different choices.
But you didn't necessarily have an experience with basically kind of having your own recollection of a past life or anything like that?
That's a good question. So everyone, so there's an unseen reality. There's an unseen reality, and we all have access to it. And people have access to it in different ways. And like you can, like there's like any of your senses you can do. Like people can smell the reality. They can see colors. They can hear things. They can hear things externally. They can hear things internally. They can just get direct knowledge. It could be just their gut. It could be how they move. Like it can be kinesthetic. So there are different ways that we all like relate, and then it gets more complex than that because we're in a like humans have been around for a while, so it's more complex than that anymore. So there's an unseen reality. We all have access to it. That past life information is a component of that. And for me, like Paul has visuals, like he gets like visuals in his mind, and that's really easy for him. But I don't think visually. I don't receive information visually. It's more kinesthetic for me. So I don't get this like nice visual like movie package of what my life was like or what past lives were like for me.
And so, I guess before you guys began this book, at one point or another, family and close friends knew about this endeavor, or not really? Was it kind of like all in secret, and then you guys came out with the book and like, hey, look what we did?
I mean, I think I was telling people, but I don't think it was really real for people until it actually got published. Because we wrote it really fast. Like I think we wrote it in less than a year, and then it took like 24 months for it to get from like sent out for publication to published. So like that's really not an easy thing for people to like grasp. So at least for me, like it wasn't really real in my circle of people until there was something that I could like hold on to and like hand to people.
What was said once it was out?
Well, my mom wanted to know which character was me. That was her first question. Uh, no, I think people people have really loved it. Like my favorite story is one of my aunt is she's a Methodist and she lives in rural red America, and I gave her a copy and she loved it. Like like I didn't think she had any association with any of the like kind of spiritual religious ideas in the book, and she loved it. That's what she told my dad. That's what she told me. I don't think she was just saying it. So that made me feel really good. That the story might be out there in terms of what people's lived experience is, but it's still enjoyed.
What about you, Paul?
And for most of my how do I put this? It's most of my work. I work in the government and the military, and so most of them don't know I wrote the book until I show it to them, and they still don't believe it because a person like me shouldn't write books like this. And that's just the work culture that I work in right now. But most of the people that I share the book with, who are part of the process, really love the story. The story is a learning process. The intent. So the intent to write was to kind of give kind of hope in people's life, because some people read it for whatever their personal reason is and get something out of it, and people get different things out of the book, which is kind of the magic of writing that I'm learning, is that people can interpret from their past experiences what the book means to them, and it's different. And people come to us and say, "This is me," or "This is me." This person in the book they identify with, and so what happens is that to me that's kind of puts chills that someone could identify with a character that we wrote about personally, and then they can see how a story develops, how the character grows, and they're identifying with themselves, this particular character of the book, and it relates to them. And so that's the goodness of what we do, and that's why we keep doing it. because it's helping. And to see people getting put a smile on their face and says, "Can you tell me something of, how is this going to end?" And we have to tell them, "Hey, there's another book coming out." And they're like, "When?" So we can read it. And I'm like, well, in time. And some people are more patient than others, so it's quite good to know there's a small demand for the next book coming out.
So I don't think Paul gives himself credit, because as part of this book, like as part of this process of bringing this book to publication, he's kind of created this little community, and one of his values is supporting local. So as part of like bringing this book together, he's drawn in all of these people into the process and created like friendships and connections and like shared purpose in life or shared sense of drive, or reaching for your goals. I don't think he takes enough credit for that, for what he's done.
Well, it looks like he didn't want to hear it either. He just walked away.
I guess not. No.
Well, I guess I'll repeat it again when he comes back. But what I wanted to ask you, so there's this thing that used to drive me nuts all the time, and over close to 2 decades now, I've kind of finally come to terms with it, to just accept it, that when it's said in this way, as annoying as it is, to just go with it, which is when a person is ready, that's when the information is going to come their way, kind of like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Do you guys feel like those concepts and things you have covered in the book, that those that are ready in some way, they will find out about it when they find out? Or do you think, hey, it will be good to be like, hey, expose them to certain information, whether they feel like they're ready for it or not?
I love that question. So I always think of this in terms of my like journey with yoga. Like I found it when I was 18, and it like helped me calm my mind down. And I've at various times like thrown myself really passionately into it, and then injured myself and backed away, and then like thrown myself back in and injured myself and backed away. So I've been like doing yoga for 15 years. And it's only in the last, like, I met this teacher that's brilliant and amazing and awesome. And I just like thinking about this journey of like 15 years of like various levels. Like I was always like trying. I always wanted the fruit, like I always wanted it. And in that process of trying, I had to go through all this stuff to get to the point where it's like, okay, like yoga is delicious now. I don't hurt myself. It's good. I'm happy. I'm healthy. My body is good. But so I was always trying and being teachers, and who knows where from here. But I'm a type A driven type of girl, whereas other people I've seen, they just like float, and then they just like drop on the perch, and it's like the perfect perch, and then they just like float along to the next one. And I know that there's challenges to their journey, but it certainly looks different than what mine was. Say like when the student is ready, like what is readiness? There's a whole complexity to that. So for me, it's just all you can do is shine your light. And I think if you're shining your light and it looks appealing and people are like, whoa, then, maybe you'll inspire them to be a little bit more ready or be a little more curious or open or what have you. So all you can do is focus on shining your own light.
Yes. And I agree with what Amanda said. All you can do is be the I call it the lantern, be a light for people to see, and some will come and some will go, and a community of people is kind of the key. The one thing about this project is, like Amanda's already mentioned, is that we have a group of people who all have the same goals but contribute their specific talent to this group, to this project. And one of our things is on our website, we want to thank everyone who's ever helped us along the way, and we give them free advertising, and we say, go to this place, go to this. These people are great. These people think the same way we do. And, we don't have to do that, but we do it as a thank you for the community, because everyone gives their small talent to our process. And there's a group of friends. It's kind of a fellowship. So that's the unique, I mean, everyone believes in the project, and that's the very wonderful thing about this, but they can only give what their talent is. And so, but they're super excited about the continuing the book making, and they're like, how can we help? What can we do more for? And it's also bringing kind of enlightenment to other people who may not have been interested in these topics. And it's kind of given a small kind of an educational process to people who read it. But probably the most beautiful part of it is the humanity of the friendships that we've made along the way. And we joke about the place we started writing is a restaurant in Kansas City. And, we joke sometimes maybe she'll put our picture up on the wall, and she's already agreed to it. So she's like, and by it's not us. It's not just two people writing. It's the community of contribution. What we've told people is it's the family, it's the group, it's the dynamics of the collaboration of artists who help us along the way. So I think that answers most of the question.
So I guess I don't know if I guess my other question then would be about were they, because of course when we do something we want excuse me, we want people to understand, we want them to read things and so on. But has there been kind of an unexpected opposition to what you were doing, where you were surprised by certain people, like really, having an issue with it and you not understanding as to exactly why? If not, that's great. I was just wondering.
I have not waved this book at the church and gone inside and from my Catholic background, I'm not publicly declaring this book in the middle of church or anything like that. We're more of a I haven't had any negative people talk about it. Some of them want to read it a second or third time because they didn't understand it the first time, which is logical. But I haven't had any aggressive person or vehemently opposed to the topics of the book. So I haven't had any negativity, or maybe I just have the look. And, some people think that when I frown, I'm actually, but I haven't had any negative comments like that opposing the topics of the book.
Right. Well, Amanda, before I get to you, the reason why I say this, it was I always use this one particular example. I have many different ones, but my big thing is being into UFOs. And so wherever I worked over the years, then people eventually find out and all this other stuff. But it cracked me up. This one particular lady, she came up to me. She's like, "Well, I don't believe in UFOs. What do you got to say about that?" I was like, okay. She somehow expected that I was just going to be like, but please believe me. Like I was going to try to convince her mind, convince her, to, by her being so, adamantly opposed that I would, try to, bring her in somehow. And so that's the story that comes to mind when I asked the question that I did. That's why I was asking you two if you had something, now that you heard my story, something similar to that, and if not, great, I'm just always wondering.
So one, I have twin sisters, and two, I work for the government. And so when you're in those spaces, you can't win arguments. That just doesn't work. It doesn't happen. Arguing or like being really attached to like your hill or your belief doesn't get you anywhere. So that's something that I learned. I had gained some mastery on, a few years ago. And so for me, like, I I don't come in with that sort of like, we need to have friction and one of us needs to give ground or not attitude. And so I don't see too much of it in the things that like I do for fun or love or joy.
All right, good deal. Well, if there's anything else you guys would like to add, I want to leave you guys with some final thoughts, final words before we finish up.
Kind of the goodness of the process is the community of people that we've become friends with, and also the book is a kind of a psychological passage of enlightenment. That's kind of the best way that I can interpret for the book. Anything?
No,
Nope.
anything
All right. Well, thank you both. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we were able to make this happen. So, I'm, of course, going to have all the available links in the description below, because this is going to go on the Ozark Mountain Publishing YouTube channel. And if there's any other links you guys want to send my way, please send it to me per email. But I believe I have most of your links. But anyway, we can work all that out later. Thank you again, both. I'm glad this worked. And, I'm sure we'll in the future talk again.
Thank
Good.
you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate your patience. And great questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, catch you guys some other time. Take care.
Peace.